All right, welcome back to KP Unpacked. This is where the biggest ideas in AEC, AI, and innovation all collide on one podcast. It's powered by KP Reddy Co. And this podcast breaks down the trends, the technology, the discussions, and the strategies that are shaping the built environment and beyond. If you are a regular listener or watcher, if you consume the YouTube version of this, you might be used to seeing me and then KP Reddy, our CEO and founder, on the screen. But I'm underway in recording a special version of KP Unpacked. You've probably seen Frank Lazaro, another one of my teammates, and I talk about AI and AEC, or AI Unpacked. What I've started doing is recording episodes with the KP Reddy Co research team. And by now, maybe you've heard one or more of those episodes, but I'm going through with all of our research team because we've embarked on a new project. And I want to talk with each one of our researchers about where they came from, what unique mindsets and experience they're bringing to the research, and what it is that they're concentrating on while they're doing their research. My name is Jeff Echols. I head up the mastermind program and the incubator program, and also I host all of our events, live, virtual, in person, and our podcasts. So you're used to seeing me, you're used to hearing me here on the KP Unpacked podcast. And I am joined today by David Niewadomski. He is a senior research advisor, which means he's one of the researchers here at KP Reddy Co. And he's someone that I have really enjoyed getting to know. He is joining a lot of our mastermind groups as we focus on innovation and construction technology. And he brings a lot of depth, a lot of knowledge to those groups and those discussions. And I'm really interested to talk to David today about his background and what his background brings to this research project that's currently going on in KP Reddy Co. So David, welcome. Thanks for joining me here today.
Good to be here, Jeff. Excited to get this conversation started.
Yeah, it'll be a good one. It'll be a fun one. And really, as we've gotten to know each other and as I have understood more and more about your background, we're not all that different, right? We've had different journeys here, there, and everywhere, sometimes literally in terms of geography. That matches up, and also throughout the industry over the course of our careers. But one of the things that I've really enjoyed learning about you is your construction background and development background, which is deep, and also sort of your ability to dig into and geek out on the technology that that's popping up on job sites and in the offices. And you and I have talked about the fact that our innovation leaders in our mastermind groups and our construction tech leaders that are in our mastermind groups, the things that you've been focusing on, especially in the last number of years in your career, really aligns with the work and the focus of a lot of those folks as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me the story. Where did you get started? How did you get into construction, and how did that turn into this focus that you have now?
Yeah, so it's been a journey, coast to coast, but it all kind of started in college, or actually high school, taking technical classes in construction. Also did mechanical for aviation. But after that, going to Michigan State University, I started in civil engineering because I come from a family of engineers. But after the first semester, I decided I wanted to switch over to construction management, which was in the same building. So it worked out well. And, I've really been in construction ever since. Started my career out west in the Bay Area in San Francisco. And, that's really where my innovation journey really actually started. It kind of lives and breathes and starts, and for the most part, in Silicon Valley. So I was, immediately surrounded by that, and have been pretty hands-on, dealing with, external providers, whether they're startups or legacies, really from the beginning, as well as working on self-developing some platforms as well. And that's really where my interest in process improvement started. So basically day one of my career, I was focused on process improvement. Um, and then I, had the opportunity to go down to Florida and get experience in a completely different market. Going from union to non-union there is a difference. And then, journeyed up to Chicago and over to New York City and up to Boston, where I currently am. My experience ranges the different contract levels, primarily on the self-performed subcontracting side, but also in the general contracting side, and also some time on the owner developer side, pre-construction and operations project management. Dealt a lot with field management as well. So I've really had hands-on experience through all the different disciplines and sides of the business, as well as dealing pretty heavily with manufacturers and our supply chain. So I've got a big picture view of the full process that it takes to build a building. So that journey led me to where we're at today, at KP Reddy Co, because one of the things that is the most interesting to me is solving the problem of all the inefficiencies that we have in construction. Spent time studying Lean Six Sigma, as well as PMP through the Project Management Institute, and really looking at what other industries are doing. How are they more efficient than we are? And a lot of that knowledge that I gained post graduating has been pretty valuable to look at things and from a different lens, really.
Yeah, that to me is super interesting, the Six Sigma and the PMP, because as you know, right, you went to Michigan State, you have Midwestern roots, and here, and I'm based in Indianapolis for those listeners that may not know that, and this, in a lot of ways, this is the auto industry area, and one of the things that struck me growing up um, in construction, with family ties, and ever since I was about 14 or 15, working construction jobs before I went to architecture school, and then also throughout school and a little bit after school even. But in this industry, project managers are, in a lot of ways, it's, oh, that's the ultimate, right? I'm gonna become a project manager at this firm, and maybe you move up to an associate or a principal or something like that, but there's this plateau, of course, at the project management level. And then I started to see um, what people from the auto industry, what they did and what they focused on and how they worked, and say, okay, well, here's project management over here in AEC, but it's very, very different, right? We didn't talk about Six Sigma or PMP or anything like that, but over in the auto industry, people that I know from that industry, that they're steeped in that. So I think that's an interesting perspective, and especially the fact that you've gone out and you started to study that, you bring that to the table. Um, One of the things, when Ted Kenny and I were recording our episode together, so Ted has a building product manufacturer background. I think that's super interesting what he brings to the research team. I forgot to mention at the beginning of that conversation that Ted is coming from building product manufacturing. You're coming from construction. Frank is coming from an engineering background. Zig is coming from an architecture background, and Hope is coming from the owner side. And so we're really looking at all sides of the built environment equation, if we can call it that. So with your focus on construction, if we kind of put it in a box that way, you mentioned a minute ago, efficiencies, and you mentioned owner side. It's none of this exists in a vacuum. I think
Mhm.
many times we can get really siloed, whether you're in an AE firm, or just part of the industry in general. I think we have a tendency to really silo things. But you're talking about something broader, and of course, this research team is looking at this holistically. So, as you think about the research that you're going to do, you personally are going to do, what do you think is important about this research, and what are you going to focus on?
Yeah, so I think it's it's a big lift, but it's an important lift, right? We need to identify the problems and then try to figure out where are these problems resonating. The owner may have an issue that's caused by two issues that the architect or contractors may have in order to understand the full problem, from all different angles, but primarily from the owner, because at the end of the day, they're the one that's paying for the product.
Hmm.
Um, but getting the different viewpoints, what are the main issues in each of the different realms of construction? Because there's a lot of stakeholders, and that's part of the big issue with why the inefficiencies is how many different stakeholders are involved in a project to build it. Whether you're talking about a general contractor, subcontractors, sometimes multiple tiers of subcontractors, suppliers, manufacturers, insurance, architects, engineers, owners reps. There's a lot of different external companies that are having to collaborate to get a job done. And one of the things that's really frustrated me throughout my career has just been the siloed data.
Hmm.
How many different areas do you need to go to put data together to form the information that you're looking at? But that's just one thing. We're going to uncover a lot of different various issues that may not have been known. I say I have a lot of hands-on experience through a lot of different sectors of the business, but there's still going to be stuff that I'm going to find out that maybe I never thought of before. And that'll make me take a view of maybe a potential solution in the future, um, differently than I would of just having the construction side experience for the most part. So I'm really excited to really get the different perspectives from many, many different people, and also collaborate with my colleagues that are also doing research and what they're uncovering. And I think before you can really start to figure out how to create the ideal solution, or, piece together ideal solutions, you need to understand the full problem, essentially peeling back the full onion of a construction project.
Yeah, that's a good point. And one of the things I mentioned in the introduction is I facilitate our startup incubator, and in the incubator, we focus on early stage and often pre-revenue startups, which in our methodology, I guess I should say, is really to focus on customer discovery, which I think in a lot of ways is what the research team is doing right now, right? You're having those interviews, you're talking to the customer, the client, whatever label we give them, and you're going to be asking the questions to try to uncover the actual problems. And of course, um, there's a lot of focus on the owner side. Right? Yesterday, Ted and I, as we were recording yesterday, Ted and I talked a little bit about the Integrated Owners Forum. So um, I think um, I think there's a focus on what's the value proposition, maybe, and not being part of the research team. You tell me where I get off here, um, but I think there's a lot of focus on what is the value proposition to owners, and where, as we look at the future of designing, building, operating all the necessary parts of the built environment, or the process of building the environment. um, what are the problems, and where do owners see the problem? Where do they need change? Is that
Yeah.
accurate?
Yeah. I mean, historically, the solution providers have been focused on just the construction side.
Mhm.
The contractors, whether it be general contracting or subcontracting, as well as architecture. Those are the people that the solutions are focused for, right? Because those are the people that were paying for it. Um, but there really hasn't been a deep dive from the owner side. What are the problems that owners have? And they're going to vary depending on the owner, depending on the market type, whether, multifamily is probably going to be different than biolabs. And warehousing will have its own different issues. But having a focus on what the owner needs, um, is going to be highly valuable to help improve the industry, because without owners, we don't have an industry, right? It's kind of like sports teams and their fans. Well, we need to make sure that the owners have the head seat at the table, because it's their building at the end of the day. We build the buildings and we walk away, but the owner doesn't. So looking at it from their lens, and not just from, putting the materials in place to build the building, but, how are they going to operate it? That full circle thinking, from concept through operating the building itself once it's complete. We need to be looking at the whole thing. How does the owner get the best experience they can possibly get when they want to build something? And, we're going to uncover all the issues that are preventing that from happening today.
Yeah, I think that's important to remember, right? It's easy, again, back to the idea of being siloed. Um, I teach in the university, and I see it there as well. It's easy for us to maybe it's even in mindset, but it's easy for us to get siloed in the idea of, oh, this is what I do, or this is the job. But one of the things that's important, and I like to say it this way, it's like we're looking at how buildings are designed, how they're built, how they're developed. And those two things are different. How they're owned, how they're operated. It is that the idea of the circular. And I said this before, and you can send me the hate mail if you want, because I'm sure this is not the exact proper way to say it, but the circular economy, from designer to builder to manufacturer to owner to operator, et cetera, is really important. It's really important to consider all of those facets, or we're missing something, right? As we're pushing forward and looking at value proposition 2025 and beyond, I think we've got to get better at looking at all of those facets and pulling them all together.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, at the end of the day, the end user is going to be the facilities team. And if something's not designed for, their cleaning systems, or, replacement of filters, is something as simple as that, is really difficult to do, that isn't an enjoyable experience for the owner after they get their building. So we need to be thinking about all aspects of it. That 100-year life cycle of that building needs to be considered at the beginning. And, how do we solve for that? How do we make that happen? Uncovering what's the true cost of that pain. We don't know today, but we're working to find out, really uncover what's the cost of all these things. What are these doing to our industry? Because you look at the cost of building is going up and up every year. Obviously, part of that's due to increased costs for different things, but, inefficiencies and things like that also have a play in that.
Yeah. So you're asking, you you personally, and you, the research team, are asking some big questions, right? You're um, identifying the problem, and we know this. We see this all the time over in the incubator, right? There's someone that there's someone that has an idea, but what's the real problem here? What is it that we actually need to solve? So that's a big, broad question. So what does this process look like? What is it going to take for you to do the research that you need to do? What's your process behind that?
Yeah, so we're having one-on-one interviews, sometimes as a group, but mostly one-on-one interviews with different professionals across the space. You know, primarily targeting owners, but also with a heavy target to the contractors, the architects, the engineers, the facility operators, the manufacturers, the suppliers, insurance providers. Everybody that has a stake into the project, and that's their business model. We want to make sure we understand the issues, and then try to relate that back to, well, what are the owner's issues? Some of those issues that we're going to uncover from the other parts of the business are going to help us, dive deeper into the owner's issues, because there may be a couple of different issues on the different tiers that are attributed to that singular issue that the owner has. And that really just helps us drill down deep and really, get to the root cause, I guess you could say, of those problems. And, ultimately, end goal would be to make the experience for the owner, a lot more enjoyable, a lot more efficient, more knowledge, a lot more like cheaper, shorter timelines potentially. Like there's a lot of different things. It's a snowball effect. Once we uncover all the issues, then we can start looking at the solution side. And I think that it's going to really help the industry gain, shed light on a lot of these problems. And then the people who are making the solutions will have a better knowledge of it.
Now, before we talked about the fact that you come from construction, Ted comes from uh, building product manufacturing, Zig from architecture, Frank from engineering, and Hope from the owner side. So, is it safe to assume that a lot of your focus is going to be around, or that each of your specialties and expertise and experience will necessitate a focus on your particular area, or are you branching out? Excuse me. Are you branching out somehow and um, a- a- approaching it from a different point of view?
Yeah. So, just given my network, because I'm been in construction since
Mhm.
2008, I have a lot easier access to people that are in construction. So absolutely, I'll probably be interviewing a lot of those people. But I also want to get perspectives from other sides of the business. I'm familiar with working with those different external companies, so I have an idea of how they operate, but I don't truly know what their problems are. I want to
Mhm.
understand their viewpoint, because I believe once until you understand the different viewpoints, you're not going to be able to understand how to fix something. Um, because at the end of the day, in order to, and I've always kind of looked at this throughout my career in terms of like managing, if someone doesn't understand the purpose of what they're doing, then it's going to be a lot harder to get them to continuously do that in an efficient and reliable manner. So, looking at the problems within our industry, understanding all sides of the onion is going to be a lot more advantageous for me than just focusing solely on the construction side.
Mhm.
So I'm looking at all different perspectives, not just construction because that's my background, but also architects, also engineers, suppliers, manufacturers, insurance providers, especially the owners and owners reps as well. So it's going to be exciting. I'm really excited to really get the different points of view from all these different people that are involved in the projects, on every project, really.
Yeah, I mean, it is such a collaborative process, right? The whole design and construction and operation of the built environment. So sure, what's the interface like between the construction side and the design side, or the construction side and the operation side? So um, that makes a lot of sense. Again, tearing down silos, I suppose. Um,
Mhm.
so I'm excited to see what comes out of this, because I think if knowing that each person on the research team is going through a similar process with similar types of stakeholders. um, I think especially in that intersection, that collaborative intersection, it's like, okay, if I came at it from the architecture side and I'm doing my research and I'm talking to the owner side or the construction side or something, I'm going to learn a lot about um, about those relationships and that collaboration. So I'm excited to see what comes out of those types of discussions. I think it's going to be really rich.
Yeah, I mean, if I understand the issues that an architect has, being from the contractor side, we deal directly with them. I'm going to be able to pinpoint the problems that cause their problem a lot easier because I've dealt with them. So that's, one of the bigger reasons why I want to get their perspectives. Everything kind of intersects to the contractors, the ones putting the materials in place. And so just, that other side of the table view is going to be highly important to our success in all this.
And when it all goes sideways, we're all pointing to each other. So
Oh yeah. There's a lot of pointing in construction. I
There is.
think they call it a lot of CYA too, but
There is. That'll be a whole section in the report, I think, is the CYA section. All right. So here's what I want to do. I want to put you on the spot a little bit. And
okay.
for those of you that are listening, this isn't a setup. It's not me trying to um, like uh, put David out there on a limb somewhere. We've already talked about this, but one of the important things, right? When we do over in the incubator, when we're doing customer discovery, one of the important things is to have a point of view, certainly, and you bring a point of view, and Zig brings a point of view, and Frank and everyone else brings a point of view, but then also to be open to the learning, to be curious, and to be
Mhm.
open, and to approach the process with curiosity and openness. Now, you may think, okay, well, I think what we're going to discover is this, and maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong, maybe you're partially right, whatever. But what I want to do is hear your hot takes. What do you expect? And then we're going to come back in a couple of months or something. We're going to record another episode and say, okay, how's it going? Were you right? Did you win the lottery, or are you still playing those same numbers, or have you changed your numbers? So um, early in the process now, what do you think? Maybe one or two, really top of mind things. What do you think is going to come out of this research? What expectations do you have um, coming into it? And again, that you're going to put aside because you're going to approach it with curiosity. But what are some expectations that you have?
So, and I mentioned before that, part of my frustration in industry was the fragmentation of data, the
Mhm.
fragmentation of workflows. That's going to be a point, right? I know that we're going to be, uncovering other people who have also are currently or have lived that frustration. Um, but what I'm most, I guess, curious about is like, what is the actual impact of that?
Mm.
Um, the things I think we're going to uncover is just the, speed of information flow, back to the owner. How do they know how their project's doing on a daily or weekly basis? What's typically missing from those updates or that access to whatever dashboard they're referencing to get real-time insights. Um, and what data is missing at the beginning of everything. What are the biggest things that if they weren't missing would change how the project is going? Because there's a lot of stuff. Well, wish you would have told me that last week,
Right.
conversations on the job site. But what are those main contributing factors that if they were, saying you got to have this part of your checklist before we put shovel in the ground, would change everything. And that's, one of the things that I'm really looking forward to understanding is, how do we move different things forward in the process to then be able to streamline them throughout the course of construction. Um, and then, uncovering the disconnects or what are the common disconnects between facilities and design, and how does that process unfold itself typically throughout owners, because I've only worked for one owner, so I have a purview from that space, but not all the different sides of the owner, whether it's a builder that's not their primary business, but they build things to operate their business. um and so it's just really identifying those things. And but I think that we're going to find that the data fragmentation has a much bigger cost impact and timeline impact on projects than people are really actually talking about. So I guess that would be my number one thing. But like you mentioned, we're going into this, basically with a clean mind. We have our own preconceived conceptions of all this, well, we can't bring that bias into the research room, right? You gotta just, take a step back. Like, you have no experience in construction and you're talking to a contractor. Keep your mind open, because then you'll start to think clearer, and also be able to potentially come up with, you know better ways of doing stuff because of that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, right? You sort of you bring decades of knowledge in, which gives you the ability to have the conversation, but then you come at the same time you come in with a completely open mind and making no assumptions, so that you can be curious and you can learn without bias. You can hear and understand without bias what's being
Yeah.
reflected back to you, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah, because otherwise you're just researching to validate yourself, and that's how you're
Exactly.
going to drive the questions and not actually
Mhm.
get and actually really peel back the onion to see what the truth is.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great way to put it. So for our audience, the people that are listening to this podcast, this episode, they're probably getting pretty curious by now because again, we're recording this. I'm doing one of these sessions with everyone on the research team. And if they're tuning in and they're listening to interview after interview with our research team, like I said, you and Ted and Zig and Frank and Hope, they're on the edge of their seats as much as you would be listening to a podcast about research in the architecture, engineering, construction world. It's riveting, I know. Um,
It's our world. It's fun.
it it is. What's as the listeners is hearing us talk about research and what's important for them to pay attention to? What is it that they should be thinking? It's like, okay, I listened to the episode with Ted. I'm listening to the episode with David. There's these other episodes coming up. What should they be paying attention to, not only in these, but then when we come back, like I said, we're going to do this again in a couple of months. We're gonna draw a line in the sand and say, okay, you've gone down the line this far. Let's revisit. Let's see how things are going. And everybody on the research team, by the way, if you're listening to this, um, everybody in the research team is publishing on LinkedIn and on our Catalyst network, which is our own network over on the Circle platform and other places in social media. So, what should they be paying attention to as they're listening and as they're paying attention, as they're watching all these things? Go, okay, what am I looking for here? What's going to come out of this? Any tips or takeaways that you'd like to provide folks that are going through this whole series at this point?
Yeah, I mean, for anyone that's in our network, which anyone who is innovative, has that future thinking mind and is curious, I suggest joining. It's a great group of people. I've had tremendous conversations, and ones that really get you to think. So, those people when they as we kind of expose our research, read it with an open mind, kind of like how we're going into it. Because when you say, hey, owner problem X, you need to step back and say, okay, that's a problem. What's my contributing factors to that problem? With whatever side of the business you're on,
Mhm.
manufacturer, supplier, sub, general contractor, whoever. Take it. I suggest just taking a step back and really thinking about it. Knowing that the owner has this problem, what could I do differently that they would no longer have that problem, or what could I use, or what process could I implement? And a lot of times, we think about like technology and stuff, and it's like, okay, let's put this into this process, but that's not always necessary. Why is that process necessary? Why is that box necessary? An extra step is an extra risk. Granted, a lot of them are necessary, but when you start looking at things from an open mind, you don't just think, well, I got to do it because this is how we've always done it. You know, I suggest people, when they're looking at these issues, think different. It's kind of like that
Mhm.
years ago, Apple came out with that camera. Probably a lot of the listeners weren't born around that time, but I've always held that commercial of the Think Different campaign, and I think that's where our industry is right now. We got to think different. Otherwise, we're going to continue down the same road. Be the most dangerous industry out there, the most inefficient industry out there, and the only way we're going to get out of that is to have enough people that think different to figure the Rubik's Cube out, because it literally is the hardest Rubik's Cube ever. Right? It's not something you're going to solve in 5 minutes. So, join our mastermind stuff and our networks, because we need more than one mind to solve this problem. You're going to get a lot better final solution with 1,000 minds than just one or two. So I suggest engaging as well. Add us and DM us on LinkedIn, set up a meeting. We want to hear your side of the story, understand the problems that you go through. And it's, sometimes things stop feeling like a problem because you're always doing it. It's just a part of your routine. But if you really start to look at your day to day, and I always said, as when I was a project manager, like I've never been able to plan a day out, because once the workers get on site, the phone starts ringing, and basically what you plan to do that day is kind of pushed off or done after hours because of the fires that we're always putting out. So bottom line is think different. Read everything with an open mind, understand what your contribution is to whatever you're reading, because we're all connected, right? It's you can look at anything from the accounting side through the field to the supplier, like they're all connected somehow. So we all have a stake in resolving a lot of these things that we're going to uncover.
Yeah, all truth. So we've talked about the Apple Think Different campaign and the Rubik's Cube, which I know the Rubik's Cube is still around. So
I've never solved one, so
neither
that's how I know they're hard.
When I was a kid, I learned how to take the Rubik's Cube apart and put it back together. That's
nice. Mechanically.
That was the solution. Yeah, not to twist it and turn it and solve it.
That is thinking different, though, Jeff. So we'll give you that.
Maybe that was innovation. I don't know. David has touched on some things. We've talked about some things here. If you're wondering about any of these things, I'm going to give you a list here in just a second. But if you're wondering about any of these things that we've talked about, wherever it is that you consume this, whether it's the podcast, on whichever platform you consume it, or the YouTube side, or even on LinkedIn, go down to the show notes. Our producers will gather up everything that we talked about that needs a link, and they'll put links into the show notes below. So don't worry about, hey, what about the mastermind groups, etc. There'll be links down below. We did talk about the KP Reddy Co mastermind program, which I run that program. Again, link down below. David helps me with facilitating many of those meetings. We have innovation leaders and construction tech leaders. We're getting ready to launch sustainability leaders, and we have early and mid-career. Again, link down below, or reach out to me. David said DM or at us on LinkedIn. Absolutely. All right. The basis of this show, the KP Unpacked show, began with KP Reddy, our CEO and founder, and I unpacking one of his LinkedIn posts. And we've evolved from there. So one, you should follow KP Reddy on LinkedIn. He posts several times a day about these things that we're talking about and other insights from around the built environment. So just go to KP, the letter K and P, and then Reddy, REDDY. Follow KP on LinkedIn for all of those nuggets. But David and I are probably much more accessible via LinkedIn than KP is. I know he's maxed out his connections and things like that. So don't be afraid to DM either one of us there on LinkedIn. We talked about our startup incubator. Again, we're always looking for founders that want to go through that. We match all of our founders with mentors. So we're always looking for mentors to match with. And then we've mentioned our Catalyst network, which is our own, think about it like our own LinkedIn or our own Facebook. It's our own platform over on the Circle platform, if you know what that is. And we've mentioned the Integrated Owners Forum, which again, link down below. You can find that page on our website. And also related to both the Integrated Owners Forum and our masterminds, we have a one-day mastermind event coming up May 20th in Atlanta, where we'll roll out the first official meeting of the Integrated Owners Forum. Many of our mastermind members will be there, and there's opportunities for you to join in those discussions with the owners, with our mastermind members and others. You can meet David there, you can meet me there, the rest of the research team will be there. So lots of opportunities, as David said, to engage, to get involved in these conversations. And we'd love to have you as part of these conversations, as part of this community, as it were, on whatever level is the right fit for you. So go down to the show notes and lots of links for all the things that I've been rambling on about here. David, thanks very much for this conversation. Yeah, absolutely. And like I said at the beginning, I've really enjoyed getting to know David and learning about his background and what he brings to our discussions. Not only the research part, but our discussions on the mastermind side. So thank you for all of that, David. I appreciate it all.
And for great conversation, Jeff. Looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna put you back on the spot.
Let's do it.
We'll do it. We'll do it. And we'll also, so what we're planning is a follow-up conversation with all of our researchers, and then also some big woolly panel discussions where we all get together and kick around what's been learned and the things that have surprised us and things that haven't. And so we'll get some really rich conversations and content out of all of this research, certainly even beyond the research that gets published. So thank you to those of you that are listening. Thank you for being our listeners, for being our audience. We appreciate you. We'll be back again next week with another version of KP Unpacked. And until then, my name is Jeff Echols. I am the head of our mastermind program and our incubator, also the host of all the versions of KP Unpacked. And I'm joined today by David Niewadomski, who is a senior research advisor here at KP Reddy Co. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back. And I'll be joined by another one of our research advisors here in another week or so. So join us again, and you'll learn more about this research project from KP Reddy Co. The KP Unpacked podcast is where the biggest ideas in AEC, AI, and innovation, they all collide right here on this podcast. It's powered by KP Reddy Co. And we break down the trends, the technology, the discussions, and the strategies that are shaping the built environment and beyond. It's the places where you live, where you work, where you play, where you worship, where you do all the things that you do. So thank you for joining us. We'll be back again next week. We'll see you soon. Thanks, everybody.